Welcome to today's Sales Leader Council webinar hosted by the Sales Collective. Just a reminder that Sales Leader Council exists to share the best practices and strategies from the world's best sales leaders. I'm Shawn Buxton. I head up sales leadership here at the Sales Collective. But more importantly, joining me today is our special guest, Marti Evans, who's a revenue systems architect, co-founder of Propel, and now a partner with us at the Sales Collective. So today we'll dive into revenue maturity in her world, explore how to evaluate if your business is truly set up for the next level of growth. Welcome, Marti.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Thanks for taking the time. And for those of you that are joining us, we're going to open up the chat right now for questions, and we'll try to check in on those throughout our time together. But Marti, if it's okay with you, I'd just love to get started.
Sure, I'm ready.
So, I know you were born at a young age and got your humble beginnings. By the way, I'm borrowing an office today. And apparently, this person is some kind of deer serial killer or something because there's lots of dead animals on the wall. So these aren't mine. Not that I'm opposed to that, but I would love to have this kind of trophy room. But I just wanted to point out the obvious elephant in the room, so to speak, right? But deer in the room in this case. But let's get started with how you got started. How is it that you
Mm.
became a revenue systems architect, and what is a revenue systems architect?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, there is not a degree for revenue systems architect. And so yeah, my journey was not straightforward, and it is one of those things where it just kind of converged through time. And I guess the key basic element is that I have my first degrees in chemistry. And so of course that's very process driven science. And so with that, I ended up in the process industries with oil and gas and mining and industry, any process manufacturing. And so when you get into process manufacturing, it's all about, how do you do it very efficiently, and how do you, make sure everything's going very smoothly. And so it's very process oriented. So I had that process mindset from early on. However, then I got pulled into the world of technology. I was very tech forward, but got pulled in earnest through companies like IBM, Microsoft, and SAP because of my domain expertise as a person that really understood the process manufacturing industry. And so that's where I added all the technology pieces that I have today. And with that, though, I was in the business development sales side of things. So then I got deep 2+ decades as a sales and sales leader for these companies. I've been through every methodology out there. And as a sales leader, I really started to really had to start understanding, well, what makes a really great salesperson? Why is one person great on paper, resume, but is not my top performer? And why another one seems to have this magic with their clients. And so it really starts to pull you into now completely away from the hardcore sciences of 10 to the seventh, kind of digits
Mm.
into what's the humanity, what's the human side of sales? What is it that, creates resilience for my salespeople? What creates the magic in a sales meeting? And that pulled me into more executive coaching, but coaching from the standpoint of the neuroscience of coaching. And of course, being with all my years of sales performance coaching. And so really looking at, really what separates the really great salespeople from the average. Then when my partner, Sass Karskadden, who's on the call today, she and I co-founded Propel. She, to her, I always like to bow to her because she's actually a black belt, Lean Six Sigma. And we both have belts, but she's got the black belt. And so she also comes from a similar industrial background and sales business development background. So when we were wanting to start this company, what we knew is that we wanted to help companies that were trying to compete on the global stage, but were smaller at this point, maybe they're under 50 million, under 10 million. How do they access all of this understanding and knowledge for their companies so that they could compete on the global stage? And so we looked at it from a systems perspective because that's our background. And so we recognized there were all these elements, but they're all very tightly integrated and interdependent. And how can you look at the complexity of that, yet still right size it so that it's useful for a company that's really in that startup stage, probably 2 million and above?
Got it. Got it. And so then the role of revenue systems architect was born from that, or is this a role that we can find out in the marketplace frequently, or is this something kind of very specialized?
Right, it's very specialized. And because when you think about it, we have systems architects, but do you have somebody that really specializes in the revenue systems? And how revenue systems is defined is also very, it's not static. Some people will, RevOps people come from a more of a technology background, and they'll look at it from the tech stack. They'll look at marketing, sales, customer success. But we go beyond that and we look at, pricing, but we also look at the soft side of it. What are the coaching requirements required to create that coaching culture so that you have the resilience for your salesperson? What is it that's happening in the sales interaction with the client that's all about the soft side of it, the neuroscience of it, why people buy? And so we're looking at all those pieces. Plus, we're also looking at how are you, not only do you have metrics, but how are you using the metrics to make decisions for your company? And how are what's your communication, internal strategy? And are you effectively leading the organization? So we get into the culture, we get into the talent, and we get into the leadership as well, because you cannot separate these things out because it is one operating system.
You caught my ear when you said culture because we talk a lot about that in our Trident sales leadership program
Mhm.
at TSC. So give me your take on culture. What do you think are some of these key elements when you do an audit for somebody that you're looking for that are positive, that give you an
Mhm.
idea that a company is headed in the right direction culture wise?
Right. Right. We do look at, have they even begun the process of setting up a coaching culture? Do they have a clear definition of even what that means? Sometimes when we enter in an organization, that's not even on the radar screen.
Hmm.
And so, how do we start getting that onto the radar screen? And how do we get them to understand how to measure that? Because ultimately, you do have to be able to measure that. And so, are the sales leaders being developed as coaches on how to coach? And so there's that piece of it. Also, is the coaching based on metrics, and that those coaching sessions, how are they actually aiding the resilience of the salesperson versus bringing down the resilience of the salesperson? There's an art, I believe, as you know very well because of your background, to having a coaching session with a salesperson that's productive and positive versus maybe activating some of their fears, uncertainties, and doubts, because that doesn't lead you into a good place with your salesperson.
Would you classify all this that you mentioned as you're telling me your story? Is this all what we classify as revenue maturity?
Mm-hmm. It is, because when you look at it, it is people, process, and technology.
Got it. Got it. Um, I know we're partnering with you to do what's called a revenue maturity audit. Can you tell us a little bit about the audit and what that looks like?
For sure. When you sit down and you start looking at this, you can take it to a level of granularity that's quite, you know, uh, quite large, quite granular. But we settled in on 23 subdimensions, six elements, and then
Mhm.
23 subdimensions. And so each one of the elements has several subdimensions. And then what we looked at is how do you roll that up into, we didn't want to have, 10 different elements, but how do you group that? So that's where we came up with the six elements that we look at, which are marketing, sales, customer success, pricing, and of course, talent, culture, and leadership. And then the final one, of course, is your tech stack and metrics.
Okay.
And so those are but then there's sub dimensions in each of those. And so
Right.
what we do is we look at the maturity of each of those sub dimensions. We look at a total of 24 best practices and 20 key performance indicators.
And when you say we look at these, like, what does that mean? How do you look at them?
Yeah. So we do it in a 2 week sprint. And so what we look for from the organization, and typically we're working with the CEO, is we ask them for a number of artifacts. We want to look at all of the evidence of any processes they have. What is their ICP? What is their marketing strategy? Do they have a playbook? What is the playbook? What is the methodology? What's the dashboards that they're running their business by or not? A lot of times in the smaller organizations, these are, yeah, we don't have a customer life cycle,
Mhm.
process. We don't have a win-loss process. And so that's fine. But we need to get that out on the table that, okay, you don't have it, that's fine, but that's something that's going to have to come along at some point.
Got it. Can we go over the six, what'd you call them?
Mhm.
Dimension
Elements. Yeah.
element?
And
Okay.
then the subdimensions.
Yeah,
And
let's go over the six elements. And I'd love to
mm,
know kind of what if this is broken? Like, what's the answer
mm,
to if, the dimension number one is broken, what happens?
right. Well, and what we see is that it's maybe not a particular element of the six, but it might be a subdimension within one.
Okay.
And so that's where we do need to get granular. We can't just say marketing has a problem. We have to say specifically within marketing what's not working.
Right.
Customer success, there's several elements or several subdimensions in there. And so some of those may be just operating just fine, but one may be missing. And so it becomes a three-legged stool because you don't have them all kind of happening. But a
Yeah.
good example that I find is one that people can get their heads around quite easily is there's research out there that if you have sales and marketing integrated, that can make a difference of 20% in your revenues. Well, that's huge. So
Yeah.
then everybody goes, okay, well, let's integrate sales and marketing. But the devil is in the details. How are you integrating sales and marketing? And to what degree? So having a sales leader and a marketing leader meet once a month is not sales and marketing integration. So what you can happen is that the ICP, the ideal customer profile, is established, a marketing go-to-market strategy is established, and sometimes 6 months later, they've actually organically deviated. Yet the messaging out to the market hasn't shifted. And that sounds like, well, maybe it's not that big a deal. But what happens is that if marketing is messaging out to this a different ICP than what the organization thinks the
Yeah.
ICP is you start getting marketing qualified leads coming in that don't match the ICP. And then because we love incenting our salespeople to take that marketing qualified lead and convert it to a sales qualified lead, they're very good at taking a square peg and putting it into a round hole.
Yeah.
We incent them that way. And I'd say, well, okay, fine, business is business. Yet it's not, because then you get to the customer success part of this. And if they are a square peg in a round hole, they're not going to be quite completely happy. The product may be not as mature as they need, too mature for what they need, better for one industry than another. It's not the right fit. So then the customer success is not as high, the churn is higher. And now you have, from a lean perspective, wasted effort. You have salespeople forcing the close on a non ICP through the process, and then they fall off. You want your most expensive, best people, salespeople, spending their time on the best possible clients for you.
So I'm assuming during this audit that you're making recommendations. Like, for example, when you said, hey, me and marketing getting together once a month, that's not alignment. So
Mm-mm.
give us an example of what the right answer is then, because I think a lot of people would think that is alignment.
Hmm.
I would think, hey, I meet with this person every 2 weeks and we talk about everything. How else can we be aligned? What does the right answer look like for that scenario?
Yeah, no, for that scenario, the marketing person is probably actually going out on sales calls
Mm,
because we're better to understand where the message is resonating and not resonating than in an actual sales call, that shadowing of that. Yeah, you can look at your MQL to SQL conversion rate. That's indicative, but there's more in behind that as well. So it is an interesting journey to get to something better, but it's a bit of a dance because you can improve over here and improve over here, but you got to get everything operating at about the same level.
yeah, yeah, I can see that. Now, do you put that in like a process? Do you say, okay, marketing's going to ride with sales once a month? Is it put in some kind of
If
cadence or something?
that's the right thing for the customer
It's
at that point, yes. But I think more importantly, as they go through this 2 week sprint and we go deep and we're looking for all the artifacts and we're talking to the CEO and we're asking all these questions and we're challenging, okay, well, what's this? What is that? And we really do go deep. And then what we develop is a maturity rating across all 23 subdimensions. So then they can start to visually see where they're good and where they're not so good. And
right.
that starts to point us because into the direction of how to create a roadmap. What should be done now? What should be done next? And what should be done later? And because there's interdependencies, because of the complexity again, you want to spend your money in the right places first. Before you invest a whole bunch of money in hiring an expensive sales team, you might want to have a repeatable sales process first.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Uh, so what's an example of another element where people have a blind spot? Because that sounds like a big blind spot to me, the whole marketing sales alignment thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Mm-hmm.
another example of where people miss it in one
Another
of the
one,
elements?
yeah, another one that always I find really interesting is some of our organizations when we step in, they do not even have a customer success organization or a customer success process, a person even looking at it. But at the next stage of that is they may have that and they may have a person that's vested with, renewals and expansion, but they're not feeding that back into product. The process is not taking these learnings that person who's every day with the client and hearing what's working, what's not, what could be better, what they're frustrated with, and there's not a communication process to bring that back around to the good of the company.
Gotcha, gotcha. So what are some signs that I need this? If I'm on this webinar right now and I'm a leader, like what would be some indicators, some symptoms maybe that I got a problem and I need to have a revenue maturity audit to see if it's real or not.
Yeah, exactly. Great question. um, Typically what we will see is someone's looking for stronger growth than they have. And so maybe they're growing single digits and maybe they're wanting to raise money in the marketplace and they are needing to show substantial growth and they're just not getting it. And they've tried hiring more salespeople, they've tried hiring more expensive salespeople. Maybe they've not done that, but they've invested over here, but they're somehow something's missing and they honestly don't know what the missing link is. So it's that not getting the revenues. The second piece that I would say too is maybe they do recognize that they are having more um, effort going into each the length of the sales process. So every product, every industry has a different appropriate length of sales process. But if yours is longer than it should be, why? And but the first indicator will always typically be my revenues just are not going up. I've tried this, I've tried that, but my revenues simply are not, the needle's not moving.
Got it. Got it. I've heard you talk about revenue management operating system
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Is this different?
No, it's all tied in together.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's not a separate thing. It's just that all of this work, once you get your pieces all in place, and I will come back to what the hard part is in a second, because that's something that's very important, is that you want to be able to have, okay, what are the measurements that you need to be watching? What are the metrics that you need to be observing? And what are the conditions around the soft parts of this process, whether it's the selling, client interactions, or the culture within for the salespeople? You want to get yourself on a journey for continuous improvement. And the management operating system is a terminology that comes from industry. We don't always apply it in the revenue world, but we should, because it enables us from a lean, simple kind of, what are the things that are going to tell us we have a problem? And how are we going to watch that and make sure it's continuously improving? And are we improving as an organization, or are we not? Or are we degrading? And so these are those elements. So that is the management operating system. It gives you a clear, quick view of what you need to know in order to know that your organization is on this journey to improvement.
Okay. So we come in and we do the audit
Mm-hmm.
and we go through this. You give us some kind of
Roadmap.
report,
Yeah.
or
There's a
something.
33-page report that goes into each of the subdimension, each of the elements in the subdimensions.
Uh-huh.
And it's also an editorial thing, because we will have talked to the end of the CEO. We've gone through all these things and then made a lot of observations and insights, because each one of our auditors are, as far as their skill set, they know the questions to ask, and they know what to look for, and they know what to observe, and they can quickly draw the insights. And so with that, then the roadmap of the what to do now, next, later does start to emerge. The hard part, and this is what I was going to come back to a minute ago, the hardest part is to take what we know and right size it for the where you, the organization, are at today. But you need that foundation that is then scalable. But you also need that entire system to be working. And that's the
So
hardest part.
yeah, this sounds like a lot of change, and you know how people feel about change.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you manage the change. How do you walk leaders through this? Because I could imagine myself as a leader sitting here going, okay, this sounds awesome, but my people are going to freak out. They're going to, because we're changing all these different areas. I don't know that I can handle all these different people
Correct.
going through change. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we absolutely take that into consideration when we're developing the roadmap, because you can really only change a couple of things at a time and then move on and move on. So it does become more of a lengthy process, but it's necessary in order to accommodate exactly what you're saying, which is that resistance to change. And of course, on our team, we have individuals that are certified in these areas, but we're very sensitive to that. And we go through that process of making sure we're doing everything communication wise to help people to understand that this is good for the company and this is going to help the company grow.
Yeah, I could see people when they come to you and say, well, our revenues are down. Do they ever like float out to you like maybe I should just hire more salespeople or hire better salespeople? Maybe we just need sales training.
I've heard that so many times, so many times. And one of the metrics that we look at is what are the, on your revenue facing people, the humans that you have representing your company, what has been the attrition of people that you did not want to lose? Because that's sometimes indicative that there's a problem elsewhere in that system. And because you're not able to attract great people, or you attract them and you can't keep them. And so then that starts to, kind of put one arm behind your back, because you're not able to get the best and you're not able to keep the best. And you need your organization to be in a position to both attract and retain the best salespeople.
What are some of the challenges that you run into uh, beyond even the change management, just like working with the leaders? I could see, for example, I could see a leader saying, "Oh yeah, this sounds great," but then you start telling them their baby's ugly, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what do I
We're very
have to?
careful. We're very sensitive people here.
Maybe this is a better way to put it. What should I expect as a leader if I'm going to sign up for this thing? Like what kind of time investment am I looking at? Uh,
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
kind of what kind of sacrifice I'm going to need to make,
Hmm.
et cetera. Like what can I expect? Because on the surface it sounds good. Oh, we're going to tell you all the things are wrong, but like what's it really look like for me as the leader?
That's a good question. I appreciate you asking that because in that 2 week sprint, at the very, very beginning, there's a half-hour kickoff meeting that the CEO does need to participate in. And then we basically send a list. We need to see all these things. And so either get us in connection with the right person or send what you have. Or if you don't have it, that's okay. No harm, no foul. Don't, it's okay. But we just need to kind of know what the current state is so that we can help you. And then we have an hour and a half meeting midway because now we have some very specific questions and we want to make sure we fully understand about how things are running. And then there's an hour and a half meeting for the findings report where we actually look at what did we find and how is your maturity across these 23 subdimensions and what is the roadmap we would recommend, and it's up for discussion and collaboration because budget has to come into it and timing and a lot of different pieces. How quickly do they want the results? It's a journey. And so it's not going to be something you're going to come in and do super fast.
Uh-huh.
And but it is the right journey so that you can have that clear growth pattern happening. And so for the CEO that has decided to do this, if we say there's 3.5 hours of meeting time, there's probably, hopefully, only 3 or 4 hours in the background sending us stuff, getting people on point to send us stuff. So we do try to keep it light out of respect for the CEO founders that we typically are working with, but at the
Mhm.
same time, effective.
Yeah, so it's not a heavy lift then for
No, no. We've
yeah, it sounds
Because if we wanted to do that, I've been on those types of projects that you charge $150,000 and you have a team of 20 people going in for a month. And in a larger organization, that makes sense. But in
yeah.
the organizations that we want to help, uh, they haven't gotten to that level of, it's not that big. We just need to see what's there.
And then with so you do the audit, you create a roadmap. Then that point, do you assist them in fixing the areas as they go through that? Do you stay on?
Mhm.
Obviously, if it was like a sales training issue or something like that, hopefully you'd be like,
Mhm.
"Hey, TSC."
No,
Uh,
TSC is absolutely on point for this. And that's exactly the model. Uh, Through the sales collective, we will come in and do on behalf of the sales collective because of our expertise, we'll do the audit. But then it is really the sales collective that is on point and the lead to the effort to start to move down the roadmap. If there are areas, a CRM implementation of XYZ CRM, that might be a specialty consultant that comes in and does that, but then the sales collective would oversee that the elements that need to be in there are done. There may be elements of it that are more coaching, and you have a great background. The sales collective has that. And so those would stay there. There are going to be some elements or some pieces of effort that may be out of your wheelhouse. But then that's where our partnership with you and your other partners can come in and help. But the sales collective is still the lead for the effort to help the client move down the roadmap.
okay, gotcha. And I want to remind everybody the chat is open if you have questions for Marty. Get access to this expert while you can. I have another question for you. What happens if I don't? Right?
Mm,
Like you come in and you
mhm.
say, "Hey, you need to look at your organization. We'll do this audit." What am I risking to lose if I don't take action and do this now versus, a year from now, 2 years from now, never?
Doing the same thing and not making a change. And if your revenues are growing in single digits or flat or declining, um, you're you're not sure where you're going to end up at that point as a company. So
Hmm.
that's the ultimate risk. On the side where sometimes we see is they say, well, we'll just hire somebody and we'll hire somebody to do this and hire somebody to do that, because technically you could take the roadmap at that point and decide to run with it yourself.
Sure.
And because you've got an idea now of what needs to be worked on and what needs to be fixed, and that's totally fine. Um, However, what we see often is someone, they will go and hire a salesperson. I think, and the research is out there, by the time you go to the hiring process, hire a salesperson, onboard that salesperson, and give them a period of time to onboard and get up to speed, only to find out that they're not the right person or they're not the right fit or it's just not going to go. There can be a couple of $100,000 of wastage right there.
Right, right. I want to go back to the six elements if we can.
Sure.
So rattle those off again, and then I want to be able to stop you and zero in on one or two of them if you don't mind. So give them
Okay.
to me again if you can.
All right. Marketing,
Marketing, okay. We t
sales,
we talked about marketing and sales. Okay, what else?
customer success,
Okay. What else?
pricing.
Pricing. All right, let's talk about pricing because
Hmm.
as a salesperson, we're all very interested in pricing. Oh, we're too expensive. Our competition is cheaper.
Hmm.
How does the audit, how does the audit help with pricing?
Right. What we look for in pricing is there a pricing strategy, pricing policy, so that you don't have people doing ad hoc discounts just because you got to get the deal across the line. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is, are you bringing the value? Are you even aware of the value of your solution to your clients? Are you looking at the value realization that your client is receiving from your service, so that you know the ROI, so you know that you could be the most expensive solution in the marketplace to your peers, but you deserve to charge more because you have a greater ROI. But if you're
Right.
just in the blind, go, well, these guys seem about like us and they're at the table with us, they're competing with us, and we better be a few points below them, that's, you're leaving money on the table.
So, yeah, because one of the things that we teach in our sales training is every salesperson needs to be able to answer the question, why would somebody do business with me, my company, buy our product or service, and pay more?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't
Mm-hmm.
answer that question, then you're kind of left to sell on price only, right? And to try to be the cheapest,
Correct.
like to really understand the value. And obviously, a big part of that is the ROI. And so you help them kind of do the math on that and figure out what really is the ROI on your solution. And that helps them create talk tracks and think tracks around are we worth it or not?
Yes, and that's another integration point, because that actually wraps back to customer success. Because in customer success, they should be looking for how deeply the customer is adopting your solution.
Hmm.
Are you are you harvesting those customer success stories? Are you quantifying it on ROI? And are you investing in that so that you can have that authority in the pricing place?
Got it. All right. So we got pricing. There should be two more, right?
Yes. And so the next one is the bigger chunk, that talent, leadership, and culture.
Okay. So how do you help me with talent? You go and find me a bunch of rock star salespeople? Is that what happens?
Can definitely do that. But before that, is really understanding, what do you need in your particular industry for your size company? What does that perfect salesperson really look like? Are they going to have three hats or are they going to have one hat? A smaller company, I've got one I'm working with, and sales hire that we will have is going to have existing business, continuing that. They're also going to have to be a hunter to go out and get new business. And they're also going to have the partner strategy.
Boy.
Yeah. So now you've got a different profile of what you need because you're a smaller company. You need them to wear three hats.
Uh-huh.
Fast forward, and now they're at the 10 million revenue size or 15. They're going to have one person dedicated to renewals, existing and making sure they're happy. They're going to have one person dedicated to the partner strategy and the ecosystem there. And they're going to have one person dedicated to hunting, or two or three.
Yeah, that's usually where people end up after they try to make somebody wear three hats, is they end up doing what you just said, right? They
That's
say,
right.
well, you only have one head, so I don't know how we can get three hats on it,
Yeah,
but
that takes a very special person to be able to switch modes. But
uh-huh.
but in a smaller company, that's where it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit about the leadership component.
Yeah, the leadership component is huge. That's where whoever is overseeing helping the organization move through this is executive coaching at its strongest. And oftentimes you have the CEO founder who is smart and has built this product and may still be the operating CEO. They have not moved to a business CEO yet. And for all their well intentions, they may sometimes just not recognize that there's small things that they do, that word choices that sometimes create uncertainty within their employees, within their sales team specifically, which is where we live.
Yeah.
And navigating, leading a sales team is, as you know, it's a special area
Hmm.
because it's so easy to and I definitely akin it to a lot of kind of coaching for sports, although that's not always the best example. But at the same time, it's keeping the mindset in the greatest possible state, and that's not something anybody's gone to school for. That's usually a founder CEO. So there's coaching the CEO so that he can be a good leader. And if they have a sales leader and they're a smaller organization, they may not have been able to hire the best. And so now we can coach that person to be a better sales leader.
Okay. How are you measuring that? Other than just, feedback from the sales team itself?
That would be observational for sure. So whether it is through recordings or actual physical shadowings, and it is takes practice
Yeah. All right.
and
We
some
had
training in there too.
Yeah, we had a question in the chat. This from, I think I'm pronouncing your name correct, Loey. This all sounds so logical and straightforward. So why do so many companies struggle with understanding the revenue equation?
Mm. Well, again, when you look at it, if you just said, did a search uh, for I need to increase my revenues, what would come up? You'd have sales trainers, you'd have sales coaches, you would have rev ops folks, you would have a variety of different things that would come up. But that system look at revenue isn't always is typically not going to come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing is I've learned in my career so far is the things that seem so obvious to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're outside, we're removed from the environment. Sometimes they're just so close to it, they can't see it. They're so used to doing things the way they've done it, they can't see maybe even how broken it is.
Right.
So I could see a tremendous value just from you coming in with an expert set of eyes from a different perspective, to use a sports analogy from the sidelines,
Mhm.
rather than being on the field itself and trying to see everything that's going on the field. You can watch from the sidelines and make a lot of better, a lot of valuable observations.
Exactly. It's very, very true. And because we've seen so much, we can see that pattern more rapidly because we've got that experience and we say, yeah, this
Yeah.
is what's going on. And that is exactly what you hire the sales collective and us by extension for is that expertise. And it is quite interesting when you look at it all. Sometimes, and I think that this you're right, that if you haven't been in this, you won't necessarily understand it. um, from the process industry, going back to that, we sometimes talk in terms of bottlenecks or constraints. And so the reason that this as a system is so important to respect as a system is you can have one area working really, really well, but it hits a bottleneck at the next point. And and so until you identify where your bottleneck is, you don't know why you're not getting the throughput. And you know that you're out there doing social media and leads are coming in, but they're not closing, but you don't know where the bottleneck is. You don't know where the stoppage is.
Yeah, and what I really like about what you do too is it gives us a plan and a direction, something to focus on, because I think a lot of times sales leaders and even CEOs and senior leadership will kind of run from shiny thing to shiny thing to shiny thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, we don't have sales because we have no social media presence. Right. And so, oh, now the new initiative is we're going to build this social media presence. And maybe they do need that, but it's not going to help them because all these other parts of the business are broken too. And your audit really takes a big picture look at everything and says, you got this here, you got this here, you got this here, you got this here. Is that an accurate?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And you don't want to put all your investment into social media presence and then not have salespeople to handle the leads when they come in
Yeah.
or to handle them poorly,
Hmm.
because then you've wasted effort, dollars again
Yeah.
in this area only to have it fail over here. And so it is a dance. I wish I could say it was simple because that would be great, but it's not.
Right.
And but that's the beauty of looking at it this way is you can start to identify where the stoppage is, and so where do you need to kind of invest and kind of keep things, hopefully operating in a cycle that's continuously upward.
Yeah, I think on the surface it sounds simple, right? The concept is simple, but when you get into actually doing it, that's when we need an expert like you and your team to come in and help guide us through it, because it's one thing to have six levels, but now you've got all these the sub areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sub levels
Mm-hmm.
and things I need to
Mm-hmm.
look at, and each one of them requires a unique expertise to be able to dive into those properly.
That's right.
All right. Any other questions for the chat before we wrap up here? We're about at time. I want to make sure that everybody has had a chance to answer any questions. Marti, while we're waiting for any final questions in the chat, final thoughts from you as far as to why people should do this, why people don't do this, what are you waiting for? Any final words?
I think it's, for the amount of money that the audit is, it de-risk your future investments
Mm,
because it's not uncommon for someone to invest a bunch of money in doing it, putting a CRM in, putting a playbook together, hiring some salespeople, doing social media. You can spend a lot of money across all of these elements in a heartbeat. But are you spending the money in the right places first?
absolutely. Makes total sense. Catherine commented, this is awesome. Sales being reactive versus proactive. Chasing bad deals also a challenge at this assessment address. So it sounds like, have you worked with Catherine before?
I have.
Okay, so she's giving you a testimony here, vouching for your process working. Well, Marti, I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with us today, and thank you out there for attending our Sales Leader Council webinar. If you want to learn more about how you can work with Marti and the Sales Collective, head over to thesalescollective.com. where you can book a consultation and start driving real revenue progress. If you found value in the session today, please like and share the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time, Sales Leader Council. Thanks, Marti.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.